The Sutra on Amitabha Buddha is also known as the smaller Sukhavati Vyuha. Sukhavati Vyuha means the land of bliss or the land of happiness, or simply put, some people like to use the word heaven. So it's a sutra about heaven. Heaven is not just a concept. Getting back to the objective of Buddhism, a practitioner of Buddhism usually follow the customary, the traditional approach to practice, namely the three columns, the three foundations of the practice. First one is disciplines and precepts, which relates, of course, to morality. So the first pillar is disciplines and precepts, which in the Chinese language is jie. In the Sanskrit language is the Vinaya, or Pratimoksha. Now that is the foundation of morality. The Buddhist teaching is founded on morality. If you don't have morality, you lose the foundation. So you really have to learn the disciplines and precepts. One of these, there's a whole canon of disciplines and precepts that we have to follow, but this is not what we're talking about in here. We're talking about the sutra, so I would just introduce that to you without going into details. So there's discipline and precepts. The second one is meditation, or samatha and vipassana. In the Chinese language is ding, samadhi. Why? Because after you have all your morality, you still have to gear your mind to the morality. You still have to purify your mind so that you can widely accept and practice morality. So this meditation is very important because our mind is always like wandering all over the place. We have to bring home our mind. Bring your mind home to tranquility so that you can understand more about the world, about your relationship with the world, about your relationship with individuals, about your relationship with nature. So you have to bring your mind back home in order to understand more, in order to study the phenomena of nature, in order to study the phenomena of the whole world. One cannot acquire wisdom without studying the world. So after you study the world, then you get into wisdom. So the first column is disciplines and precepts. The second column is meditation. And the third column, or the pillar, is wisdom in the Sanskrit language, which is prajna. And in the Chinese language is hui, jie, ding, hui. But that's the usual approach. A very long procedures of study, a lot of concentration, a lot of listening and reading and thinking and meditation and lecturing, a lot of that kind of practices. The Sutra on Amitabha Buddha brings us another approach. And this approach, as I said, is quite similar to other religions' heaven concept. In other words, you don't have to completely purify your mind and attain and become a Buddha in this life because given the busyness of our schedules every day, given your responsibilities for your family, for your jobs, and given the amount of time you devoted to studying and for the purification of your own karma, you may encounter that you don't have time for that because your schedule is too busy. And also being filled with previous karma to act on your fate, to act on your destiny, to act on what you encounter in your daily life, you may not have the opportunity to get into morality, meditation, and wisdom. You may not have the time for doing that. Simply because, first of all, you are buried in your own karma. You're being influenced by your own karma. You're being habituated by your own karma that you may not even have the time to do that. In the Buddhist teaching, we classified our time now, which is 2,500 more years after the Buddha's nirvana, after the Buddha's passed away, already 2,600 years, and now it comes to what we call the Dharma ending age. That means less and less people will be interested in the study. Less and less people will be interested in one's objective of life. Imagine how many people would say, where do I come from? Why did I get born into this world? Why do I have to die? And where would I go after death? Who would be interested in such metaphysical, spiritual questions? Most people are interested in is what? Materials. How do you get more fame, to be more famous, to get more money, more wealth, and looking for satisfaction of senses, of temporal senses. Who would be interested in looking, where do I come from? Where do I go after I died? Why do I have to take the trouble of coming and going? Well, I have just one life. And who would get into this kind of metaphysical, beyond ordinary questions? Not many people. So we call it the Dharma ending age. And there's a deterioration in the spiritual quality of sentient beings. Our spiritual quality has been deteriorating because we're just buried in materials. It may be difficult and take a very long time to uphold the Buddhist disciplines and precepts to practice morality. To meditate in order to purify one's mind, it takes a long time, and gaining wisdom to break our ignorances of the paticca samuppada, of the links of our life and death, to break ignorance so that we can get out from life and death. More and more, it becomes more and more difficult. So it is one's sincere conviction that one is almost impossible to become a Buddha in one's lifetime. During the Buddha's lifetime, there were the Buddha's disciples who attained arahat in one's lifetime. 1,250 of the Buddha's disciples, most of them become arahats. What do I mean by arahats? Or do you know what arahats are? They already have broken their life and death chain. They don't have to reincarnate anymore. No more reincarnation for them. And after this, after getting rid of this physical body, shedding this materialistic body, the five skandhas, they enter into nirvana, which is complete peacefulness. We carry this body, and when we shut this body up when we died, we roll into the next round of reincarnation, bringing our karma to the next round. We've been going round and around the circle like a windmill, never-ending windmill, life after life, non-stop. One life could be better than the other life, or could be worse. Depends on your karma. You look around you in society, your friends, all our destinies, we call it, quote and unquote destinies, are different. Everyone's face is different. Everyone's fate is different. Some people get born into a rich family. Some people get born into a family that's so poor that they don't even have enough food every day. They have to travel miles to go to school without taking breakfast. So what is this approach? This approach is we don't have to really go into deep study of morality, meditation, and wisdom. We simply rely on the help of a Buddha who has taken vows that he would like to come back and receive our quote and unquote soul into that pure land, to receive our consciousness. The Buddhist teaching didn't use the word soul, S-O-U-L, soul. They used consciousness, or the alaya vijnana. We all have consciousness. What are we made up of? We're made up of the mind and body. Our body is material. It's an aggregation, it's a conglomerate of body cells together. And other than that, we're made up of the spiritual self too, and that's what we call our consciousness. Our consciousness reincarnate all the time, life after life. And Buddha Amitabha make a vow that when a sentient being die, if that being is so mentally linked to the mentality of Amitabha Buddha, he has the chance, or the Buddha has the chance, the sentient have the chance to be mingled together, and he can, through influence of his wish, of his vow, and of his power, receive him into the Pure Land. And somebody call it the heaven. Whatever you call it, it does not matter. Words, it's just a word. You call it heaven, that would be okay too. You call it heaven, but it's a land of bliss. In that land, you don't go back, you don't retrogress to the 6 paths of reincarnation anymore. You don't retrogress back to life and death. You will be studying in there as if that is a universal university until you become the Buddha. So you already cut off your reincarnation. And that's very important, you know, because every life reincarnate, and there's a danger of reincarnation. You lose yourself. But in this, you don't. And we've been studying this sutra from detail as to where is that heaven, where is that land of bliss? How do we qualify ourselves to go there? And what is all that heaven all about? Not just mentioning a heaven, not just like, I have a heaven, you can go to me, you can come to me, as long as you believe in me. It's not just like that. How to get there? Where is it? And what is in there? Who are in there now? And what's the purpose of being in heaven? Is it just an unending search for happiness? Or that search of happiness is just a transitory route? Because if you're always looking for something, you are still being buried in the ocean of greediness. There's nothing to be obtained. If you have an idea to obtain more, how is that different from a pursuit for fame, wealth, and money? Cut off that pursuit, cut off that attachment. So that's the Sutra of Amitabha. So, given that, we have already studied a lot about it, and we continue with what we've got. So, the next one, let's read it out first. Then again, all beings, O Sariputra, you know what? Sariputra is the disciple of the Buddha, Sariputra. O Sariputra, ought to make fervent prayer for that Buddha country. Buddha Sakyamuni said, O Sariputra, given all we've talked about, we should make fervent, conscientious prayer that we want to go to that Buddha country. We want to go to the Sukhavati Vyuha. We want to go to that land of bliss, land of happiness. And why? Because they come together there with such excellent men. Beings are not born in that Buddha country of the Tathagata Amitabha as a reward and result of good works performed in this present life. Why do we have to make fervent prayer to Amitabha's land? Because we'll mix with bodhisattvas and saints in there. In other words, if we go to that university, we'll mix with all these tutors, assistant professors, and these professors are professing what? Professing free from reincarnation, professing nirvana, professing enlightenment, professing understanding. They're talking about all that, and they're teaching us. We'll be mingle with all these excellent men over there. Why aren't there any women in there? Why we're just talking about men? In the sutras, it says, when you're in that land, there's no such thing as a sex in there. There's no such thing as men and women. Because when there's men and women, there are desires. There's a sexual relationship. There's a sensual pleasures in there. Sensual satisfaction in there. And sensual satisfaction is what pulled us down. Ironically, we're in a topsy-turvy idea that we always need sex. But sex is the act that pulls us into all these desires. And we have to understand that. It's difficult to understand. But if you analyze it, that kind of sensual pleasure is temporary. It's sunyata. It's without its essence. From an unending search or an unending search for satisfaction of that kind of sense, has created a lot of social problems, a lot of individualistic problems. So in that heaven, there's no such thing as sex anymore, no desires for sex anymore. Isn't that pure? Some people who may not understand, they will say, no, there's no such thing. I'm looking for that kind of thing, and you don't have that in heaven, so I'm not going to heaven. That's up to you, because you don't understand it. But let's get into more. Beings are not born in that Buddha country of the Tathagata Amitabha as a reward and result of good works performed in this present life. You go there not because of the karma only. You go there because of your practice. If you don't practice, if you don't believe in it, if your frequency is not attached to the frequency of that Buddha, even though you have performed a lot of good deeds, because you haven't had your desire to go there, you cannot go there. Even though as a result of good works, you may not be able to go there. Why? Because you have no intention of going there. If you practice good deeds, if you're always compassionate, you practice all kinds of good deeds, then in your next life, you carry good karma to your next life. For example, if you're always charitable, as a person, you're very charitable, you're very considerate, you're always donating. You even donate your home for charity purposes. Then in your next life, because of this causality, you may enjoy richness of life. In other words, you may be a multi-billionaire, you may be extremely rich. Then because of that causality, you have that kind of effect coming back to you. But if you didn't have the desire to go to that land, you still couldn't go, because you didn't desire to go there. You still want to roll into the karmic energy of getting good results. You're performing certain deeds because you want to have a good effect. You attach to the effect. If you attach to that effect and not believing in that heaven or in that land of bliss, you cannot go there. So no, it says, therefore it says, beings are not born in that Buddha country as a reward and result of good works performed in this present life. So they're born in there because of what? Because of they still have to wish to go there. No, whatever son or daughter of a family shall hear the name of the blessed Amitabhas, the Tathagata, and having heard it, shall keep it in mind and with thoughts undisturbed. So keep it in mind for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 nights. When that son or daughter of a family comes to die, then that Amitabha, the Tathagata, surrounded by an assembly of disciples and followed by a host of bodhisattvas, will stand before them at the hour of death, and they will depart this life with tranquil minds. So in other words, this paragraph emphasized the importance of belief and the importance of training yourself so that at the juncture of death, you're not confused. At the juncture of death, most sentient beings are confused at the moment of death, because you could be in pain, you could have so much attachment to this world. You don't want to leave your relatives, you don't want to leave your son, your daughter, your husband, your parents. You don't want to leave behind your assets, your estates, your money, your wealth. You're so attached to the world that you just have to roll into the next karmic energy, karmic level of attachment into being reincarnated again. When I said being reincarnated, don't mistaken me for saying there is someone who controls your reincarnation. There's a God, there's a creator who controls your reincarnation. Nobody controls your reincarnation. You are in control of your own reincarnation. You reincarnate because of what you have done. Nothing to do with God. Nothing to do with your guardian angels, nothing to do with the Creator. You create your own world, you create your own karma. So, this paragraph reminds us that we have to have faith in going there. We must make up our mind that we want to leave this samsara, this life and death, at the juncture of death, and go to that land Well, we can study in there to become the Buddha. If you always keep it in mind that you want to go to that land of bliss, Amitabha's land of bliss, or Amitayas, now you should know what Amitayas and Amitabha is the same. Amitayas means longevity or eternity, and Amitabha is immeasurable light. Amitayas is an immeasurable lifespan. Life and light, light and life, difference. But the Buddha has both meaning. Make sure that you train your minds. That's the reason why we've been chanting Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha all the time. So that at the juncture of death, we're not confused. So that we'll build up our habituation for that frequency. In other words, you're so used to that frequency in your phone, in your whatever, it's just an example. You're so used to that frequency that at the juncture of death, you so link up with it that it's so easy for you to link up with it again. So you don't have to search for your phone to link up with it. You just, right at your fingertip, that your frequency is attached to the frequency of that Buddha. That you won't be confused, that you're still searching for the number. You're still searching for that number that you're not familiar with. You should be absolutely familiar with that number that you should link up to. That's your frequency. Or is that your phone number, or whatever you want to call it. That's a mental frequency. You have to train up now. You don't wait till when you're dying. Then you start to chant Namo Amitabha. We have the experiences in here that there are a lot of practitioners of this approach chanting Amitabha all the time, but they don't train themselves well enough that at the juncture of death, they're so confused that they don't know how to chant anything. Because if they have Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease, when they get old, they can't even think, they can't even recognize people. How do they recognize the name of Amitabha? But if you train yourself in such a way that it is deep rooted in your mind, it is right in your right hemisphere, not just in your left hemisphere. You should know the difference between the left and the right brain now. Your left brain is languages, whatever you have learned about relationships, about society, about history, all that you have learned mostly in your left. Your right is where the inner self is. It's where the depth of yourself is. You bury that in that right hemisphere. And that right hemisphere is not easy to get into. That needs a lot of training to get into it. So even at the time of death, that you lose all your numbers, you lose all your images, you lose all your memory, you lose all your recognitions of your relative members, this part may still be working. In other words, if you go to a nursing home, you will see senior people who, your relatives, your dad, your mom, 99 years old, when he look at you, he may not recognize you. He may look at you and he may not recognize who you are, but after a while, maybe you stay there for 1 hour or half an hour, and you slowly talk to him or her, the senior 99-year-old, you will find, if you look really closely in his or her eyes, that he actually knows you. He just can't express it. He may seem at a loss. He may not be able to even feed himself. His fingers may not be working. His jawbone may be so stiff that he cannot swallow. He has to depend on needles to put in their mouth for the food, but they still have the right mind functioning. And that right mind takes patience to get into. So when you talk to people who suffer from that kind of disease, don't lose your temper. Don't say that, oh, he's hopeless. I mean, he can't recognize me. And there's no point for me to visiting my dad or mom because they couldn't recognize me as his son. That's may not be true. If you go there every day, if you stay there long enough, you will find, you look closely in the eyes, he look at you and you look at him. He knows, but he can't express it. Why? Because you, as his son, is so deep-rooted in his right hemisphere. He cannot express it, but he knows. But if you chant Namo Amitabha all the time, it is deep-rooted in your right hemisphere. At the juncture of death, it comes out. At the juncture of death, you may find peace. You may look that you're shaking, you're an old man, 99 years old, you cannot feed yourself, your fingers are so stiff, your jawbone you cannot swallow. And it seems that you are just like a plant, a human plant. But actually your mind is functioning. Don't give up hope. And read that book. I always introduce to people who like to understand more about the brain. That book called My Stroke of Insight. You can get it from e-book. My Stroke of Insight is talking about a Harvard doctor, also a PhD in brain study. She was professor at Harvard, teaching doctors about brain specialist. She got a stroke herself, and she stayed in bed for 2-3 years, and she slowly recovered. She's using her right brain to nurture back the left brain. And she gave you a narration, a very detail of how she did it. And if you read that book, it is so in congruence with the Buddha's teaching. You'll find purity in there. You'll find tranquility in there. You'll find oneness in there. You'll find prajna paramita in there. You'll find wisdom in there. I plan to talk about more, but I can't. Yeah. So I haven't finished really. So this is my second slide. I have a lot more slides. I don't want to rush it. Rushing it would it is no good. So if you get into Google, you will find My Stroke of Insight. Very, very good book. And it reinforces you that the Buddha's teaching is right. The Buddha's teaching is not just about blind faith, superstition of just belief. Believing is not enough. You really have to understand what's going on in your mind. Buddhism is the study of the mind, not the study of how to be a good follower. The Buddhist teaching said, don't be a blind follower. You have to question it, find out more about it.